when you give charitably or when you give charitably and you get a tax receipt and you actually use the tax receipt to file, on your taxes, it's kind of like a half off coupon.
Mhm.
And what's cool about that is that, as we bridge onto the impact side, is when you pay your taxes, and look, it's super important to pay your taxes, in my opinion. But like when you pay your taxes, the government gets all that money and they spend it where they want to. When you pay philanthropy, you get to choose where that money goes.
Welcome to the Business Ownership Podcast, brought to you by Awareness Strategies, helping you navigate the waters between entrepreneurship and ownership. Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedelec, and I'm super glad that you're here with us today because I'm here with my most amazing guest, John. John, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So give everybody the highlight of who you are and what you do for business.
Well, I'm from Vancouver, Canada, and I grew up here actually. Schooled in Montreal at McGill, and eventually happens to in corporate finance. Started my career. Happenstance to move back to Vancouver because my dad was one of the pioneers of charity law, and that's the interface that got me into the charity world. It was an accidental encounter at some level, despite the fact that he is my father. And I just learned a ton about charity and launched about 5 or 6 years, 7 years after really sitting in the room and listening to him work with clients, launched something called Charitable Impact. And Charitable Impact is a platform that helps people and companies give. So we're kind of like a charity bank in that we work with and for the donor, regardless of what causes they care about, what charities they want to give to, or how much money they give away. And we do that because we think when we look into the marketplace, there's lots of people raising money for charities, but there's nobody working for the donor. And so we decidedly did that and built a tool and wrapped support around it.
Very cool. Well, I am super excited about this. There's a ton of um, nuances and directions we can take this conversations, and we will. But first, let's talk about kind of the platform. What does that mean to you, and what does that then imply as far as the donors go? So, is it a tech program? Is it a bank? Is it give me the
Well,
nitty
it's
gritties?
yeah, sure. So I should be careful to say it's not a bank. I mean, we're not a bank, right? There's rules around that in
Yeah.
Canada. But it's like a bank in that, you have your own account as a user, and you put money in there, you get tax receipted right away. You can then hold the money in that account. It can even be invested from there. And when you're ready to choose, how you want to use that money to support the change you want to create in the world, like what charities you want to give to, for example, you send the money there. And in terms of that part, that's where I'd say it's a technological platform. I mean, it is 2024, so it's hard to do anything at scale without technology. And
Right.
we've been built on technology since day one.
Mhm.
And so yeah, we are a fintech company, I guess,
Mhm.
that focuses exclusively on charitable giving, and our audience is the donors, not the charities, and that's the big thing that I would say makes us different. Again, because in the marketplace, there's no shortage of people asking for money.
Mhm.
The shortage is in terms of who helps you work through how to navigate the sector. What can you do? What can't you do? Why? And ultimately, working for you to actually get the money to where you want it to go.
Nice. So let's talk about that a little bit because I think a lot of people don't really understand kind of the gaps in the system or kind of what pitfalls they can fall into when they're doing this. Like, what are some of the things that people should know that they don't know when it comes to charitable donations?
Well, there's two big things, and one sort of on the money side, and one on the impact side.
Mhm.
So, starting on the money side, uh, it's really important for people to know that when you donate money, you get a tax receipt, which acts as a tax credit. And so it really costs you about half the amount of, you know, you save on tax when you give.
Mhm.
And so there is a tax financial benefit to that. And it's worth remembering that because when you give charitably, and or when you give charitably and you get a tax receipt and you actually use the tax receipt to file, on your taxes, it's kind of like a half off coupon.
Mhm.
And what's cool about that is that, as we bridge onto the impact side, is when you pay your taxes, and look, it's super important to pay your taxes, in my opinion. But like when you pay your taxes, the government gets all that money and they spend it where they want to. When you pay philanthropy, you get to choose where that money goes, right? So you can align your philanthropic dollars with what you care about most. And that's the other really cool part to say. There's so many things that are charitable at law, right? The likelihood that there's listeners out there that can't find a registered charity that's totally aligned with what they care about is very, very low. And when you do stuff that you like, you do stuff that you love, things that you care about, life is fun. So charitable giving, I think, gets a bad name sometimes because, oh, charities are ineffective and all that kind of stuff. And there's truth to that, just like not every restaurant you go to is amazing. Okay. So not every registered charity is amazing. It's the same as any other sector. But but when you sort of spend time, if you like eating and you spend time thinking about what type of restaurant you want to go to and why, and you find the ones you like, then going out to restaurants can be a super enjoyable thing and a really important part of life. And so can charitable giving.
Well, we talk about this a lot on this channel because one, to me, it's a super important aspect to capitalism to understand how this whole aspect of it works, why it became a donation in the first place, according to governments, is because it is paramount to economics, period, that wealth cycles through everyone. It has to cycle through everyone from a 50,000 foot perspective. It has to. So that we'll go on that perspective right now. If you don't understand the concepts, I'll send you back to all of my tax conversations with any of my other guests, and we'll talk about that in depth. When you understand that, then you understand the importance of creating wealth in a capitalist system. It is up to the individual. If it were a 100% capitalist situation with no government, it's up to the individual to decide, okay, do I want roads through my community? Do I want water through the community? How do I want this to all happen? And it's up to us to fund that so that everybody in the community is getting the water, is getting the food, is getting the transportation, and all of those things. So we put in government in place and we go, hey, you take care of that. Now, that doesn't go to the extreme of, yeah, but I want a waterway that you can go kayaking in. Okay, that's a completely separate issue. If I'm going to be moving waterways to be able to understand what is the impact, am I affecting the ducks, the wildlife, the kayaking, like how does this all transpire and who's paying to do the research on said thing? And to me, it is up to the capitalists to be able to make those decisions because inherently we tend to see big picture issues. We don't get stuck in the minutia of things. And just from a personality perspective or brain type personality, that's who we want to have looking at these big pictures so that you're seeing the full spectrum of what can happen. And then you get a bunch of people that come in and decide, okay, so how do we balance these scales? Because there are always going to be scales to balance. It's never, oh, we're just doing this and it's going to impact this one arena. It's going to impact everything. It always does. So how do we kind of work that from here? So I think it's incredibly important that people understand how charity works, not only in their businesses, but in an economic situation. So if I'm a startup business and I go, okay, I want 10% of every dollar I make to go somewhere, well, that's the first 10 cents has to go somewhere. Where's it going to go? And how do you decide? So that's kind of my background on this. So I think this is an incredibly important discussion to have so that people understand that if you don't like having the government in place that's in place, it's up to you to start putting your dollars where you want them. And oftentimes that starts with the charities. So that's
Yeah,
my
that's right. And yeah, no, that's right. And that's well, soapbox or not, it's also like an accurate characterization of one of the contexts in which one of the histories of charities, particularly in North America. When the pioneers first came, to North America, and they started setting up like, the sort of European version of cities and places like that. I mean, before there was government, they funded everything themselves. Now on the and that's sort of the extreme of the one lens on the capitalistic sort of economic system. When you go to the other extreme, like the communist system, without saying one's better or worse, just in the charity sector, there is no such thing as charity in the communist system, but because the government takes care of everything for you, right? And so you don't do it yourself at all. And so entrepreneurship at that level of creating things, to the extent that you see that the way I want people to see it, which is that you're contributing towards the development of society, includes creating and contributing towards things that do create a well-rounded society, right? I mean, even the richest people get sick. They need hospitals, right?
Mhm.
Everyone needs education. People fall on hard times, and they need, they need help. There could be disasters, and food's a little bit more scarce. So food security, all these types of things. If you want that in your society, you've got to contribute towards it. And so thanks for saying that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a fascinating conversation. So when it comes to kind of the decisions that your clients are typically making, like is there a question kind of that they typically will come to you with and say, okay, I don't understand this. How does this work? And why are we doing it this way? Or kind of what is the mindset, the paradigm they're in when they come to you?
Yeah. So, you can imagine that an organization like ours, we've done about $1.5 billion worth of giving. We have tens of thousands of different people who use our platform, and as a result of that, we have everything from a range of people who have who are decidedly charitable. Most often you see this in a religious commitment, kind of context. I'm a Christian, or I'm Jewish, or I'm a Muslim. I commit to, often it's around the 10% figure. You mentioned that before.
Typically tithing.
And these are people, yeah, like tithing in the Christian tradition. So these people are decidedly charitable, and for them, we really give them a tool that helps them organize and manage all their charitable giving, right? And each time they allocate out to a charity, not only is it tracked, but they can decide, for example, if they want to let that charity know who they are or be completely anonymous. So to decidedly charitable, more experienced givers, we give tools and more robust type of support. Hey, do you want to do some matching in your community? Do you want to invite your friends into and raise some money around the charity or the charities that you care most about? On the other hand, we have people who are interested in exploring what it means to be charitable. And for those people, we provide a sort of more like navigational guide like support. These are the types of things that are charitable. When you give, this is what a tax receipt looks like. Here's how the system works. And but what's consistent between the two groups of people is, what is it you want to change in the world? What is it you want to create change for in the world, and why? And then we come in with our support and expertise and say, well, here's some suggestions on what you can do. Now, in that regard, I think it's really important to say that in our system at Charitable Impact, the donor's in charge, right? So kind of like when you buy a house and you have a real estate agent, the real estate agent doesn't choose the house for you. You talk to the real estate agent about like, oh, I want, I've got kids, so I think I want this many rooms and this many bathrooms, and I want to be close to schools, and I want to be this, and I want to be that. And then they say, here's an area for you to look at. Here's another area for you to look at. And they guide you through the process, but you decide ultimately what house to buy. That's how charitable impact works too, right? So we're here to provide you the tools and the support required for you to make the best decision possible at that time in your life. And I guess a little bit like houses, the house that fits you when you've got young kids is not the same house that works for you when you've got older kids. And once your kids leave the house and you're an empty nester, it can change yet again. And in that regard, charitable giving is like that too, in the sense that, like, you don't have to commit to one cause or one charity and stay with them the whole time. It's perfectly fine to do that. But it's also okay to navigate and go, gee, like we've been hearing more about the environment recently. Maybe I want to start giving there. Notwithstanding the fact I've been giving into the health sector for a long, long time.
So when it comes to the work that you guys do, how like are all do you know about all charities that are in existence in a certain area? Is that kind of more of an educational thing? How does that work?
Yeah. So if an organization is a registered charity,
Mhm.
and there's you either are or you aren't. It's like on or off. Okay, and that's governed by Canada Revenue Agency. They have a charities directorate there, so
Mhm.
they're in charge of what is and what isn't a charity, which is based on law for what it's worth. They're supposed to be. Um, um, well, they should be based on law. Um,
That's a whole other conversation we're not going to
well,
get into.
actually, it is unfortunately,
Yeah.
but um, but not to digress. So if you're a registered charity in Canada, you're
Yes.
in our platform.
Okay.
Okay, so we're again, when your goal is to serve the donor, you have to have a certain neutrality to you about where the money goes. So we
Mhm.
don't sort of vet charities and decide like what's a good charity, what's a bad charity.
Mhm.
In the same way, it's a little different, but like you know, if you use a self-directed investment brokerage like I don't know RBC Direct Investing or something,
Mhm.
all the stocks that trade on the TSX or whatever are there, right? And then
Mhm.
it's up to you to decide which one you're going to buy.
Mhm.
So that's analogous to that. If you're a registered charity, they're all on our platform.
Mhm.
There's tons and tons of registered charities in Canada. There's over 86,000 of them.
Right.
And so you can find them, you can search for them on our platform. And one of the goals that we have is to make it easier and easier for people to find charities, notwithstanding the fact that it's actually a pretty hard problem to solve. The best way to solve that problem is actually more on the qualitative side, in my experience, than it is on the quantitative. What I mean by that is if you're relatively in touch with what you care about changing,
Mhm.
because you love ice hockey and you know that not all kids can afford to play ice hockey and you want to contribute towards that in your community. And you know that once you're there, it's easier to find a registered charity to work with than if it's just like, what charity makes the most change in the world? Right. Because that's a very subjective issue. Yeah. So our platform is cause neutral at the level of every registered charity is there. We give you the tools to navigate and find those charities. We give you information about all those different charities, and we leave the decision making up to you.
Mhm.
Notwithstanding the fact that our team is here to support you and help you think through the different options you have for creating change.
Well, and another reason I like this so much is because the there are so many charities out there that are doing so much good work, but they're not good at marketing. They're not good at necessarily administration. So there's companies, particularly in Calgary, that I know of that will bring food to people that need food, and they're just bringing food to people who need food. That's all they're doing, really. They are charitable. They've registered. They've gone through all this stuff because somebody said, "Hey, you really need to write this off. This is not a good idea long term." So they go and they go through the process of registering and they do that, but then they still aren't getting the word out. Like nobody knows about them other than the government knows about them because they have a file. But it's kind of like nobody knows about somebody's business just because they're a registered business. Until you go and do a nuance report, you don't know what businesses are out there or how they're
Sure.
running. So you guys can bring light to a lot of people that are doing really good stuff. They just really don't have the marketing or the administration to fund marketing in order to get the word out.
That's totally true. Can I make 2 points on that?
Oh, of
First
course.
is well, one more counter to first is so one of the benefits of a system like ours,
Mhm.
uh, because it allows you to separate the donation that you receive the tax receipt for from the decision on which registered charities to give to. It allows you to be charitable, to commit to like I'm going to do $100 a month. I'm going to commit to that, and then that $100 just sort of piles up in your account, and it lets you then go out and find the registered charities, even the small ones that you haven't heard of, sort of on your own time without the sort of knowing that you're still in the game being charitable, right? So that the time and space that our platform gives you, it's called a donor advised fund, is really important. Now that's analogous to saying, a savings account is useful because you can save for vacation before you necessarily know where you want to go. Do I want to go to Mexico? Do I want to go to Banff? Do I want to, whatever, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's really important. The second point that's related to that that's really important is lots of Canadians have all sorts of objections to participating in charitable giving. And a lot of them are very important and real, and a bunch of them are also on pretty thin ice in my experience. So one of those common objections though is that, gee, like charities spend too much money on fundraising. And so we have this like problem with fundraising where it's like I don't want charity spending money on it because I just want my money to go to the cause to help the children get food, for example.
But
And yet
if you
and
don't know
yet
about
if
them,
if you don't know about it, you can't get them the money.
exactly.
So 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 if you want to reduce fundraising costs in Canada, my economic guidance to you is start giving without being asked to give. And uh, plug, but also there's other donor advised funds in Canada. So please check them out if you don't like Charitable Impact. The plug on the donor advised fund, or so the plug on Charitable Impact is it's the only real tool that's accessible to all Canadians, no matter how much money you have, where you can be a charitable person by donating money while you kind of wait to find that perfect charity, uh, regardless of how much marketing they do. So um, uh, we want, for entrepreneurial people out there in particular, we want them to understand that like when Canadians all participate in charitable giving without being asked, the cost of fundraising goes down. Right. So
Here,
if you
here.
really want to see the cost of fundraising go down, participate yourself without someone twisting your arm, and then having to invite you to some dinner event you probably don't want to go to anyways, just to help.
I just love it. Absolutely. And it's so there's this philosophy too, while we're on this topic, is the whole tithing to a church thing is historically or biblically, if you want to put it that way, is 10% towards your spiritual life, whatever that might mean to you. Open it up to that. And then there's another 10% that goes out to your community at large, whatever that means to you. So it's not instead of, it is in addition to, which means that as you start budgeting your life, you have to start realizing that as an entrepreneur, you have the capacity to make endless amounts of money. There is no limit on how much money you can make. And you have an obligation, spiritually or otherwise, however you want to put that, to contribute not only to yourself and to society, but also to society. And so when you start looking at this, I think the habit is always more important than the amount. And when you start to put away, a dollar out of every 10, and you just start putting in a sock, whatever, at the end of the month, you go and talk to John, okay, what do I do with this? Then you're in a habit of doing something. It's like buying stocks, is you don't just go out and buy stocks. That would be the silliest, most foolish thing you could possibly do, and go, I like hockey, I'm going to go and buy some stocks and hockey stuff without knowing anything about it. You want to understand what it is that you're getting yourself into and how you're contributing, because I really do think that the more somebody understands kind of the ins and outs of what they're doing, they start to realize, oh, I didn't think that was going to be a problem. Right. I didn't think too much money in somebody else's hands is going to be a problem. Well, it is if they don't know how to manage it. So,
Yeah,
as a
yeah,
business owner, you might want to help them to figure out, where do we store the food? What do we do with this stuff? It's going to freeze in the winter. We can't just, oh, who knew? And
yeah,
you just start to figure out kind of things and society in ways that you never saw possible before. And all of these things become holistic and affect all of your business. So you start to run your business better, you start to run your community better, start to become a better person, all that kind of fun stuff, whatever that might mean to you. No judgment. And it's a really cool way that you've brought this in that people can start playing right away. I love it.
yeah. Well, picking up on I love all that. Picking up on where you were going at the end there.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important actually to to tell people, and then they can determine on their own that when you give, you get something in return yourself. So, I mean, for sure, one purpose of giving and the purpose that we talk about all the time is the impact that we create on the causes that we give to. Now, that's super, super important. But by being involved in that, you yourself get benefits too. And those benefits go beyond tax, right? I mean, there's all these like erudite quotes through the years about how, like, being of service to others is where real happiness is from. And that's not, those types of quotes have survived through the millennia because it's true, right? So when you give, you do get something in return. And so it's not to be like selfish about it, but it's to recognize that there's something in it for you when you participate with others. And when you really think about it, that's true. I mean, someone who has got kids himself, it's like what a pain in the ass kids are sometimes, and yet like my life is so much better, because of them.
Mm.
Because of and all of that I give to them, notwithstanding the fact that there's times when I, kind of shake my head and go, geez. Um, the only other thing I'd say, and I loved your comment about like you're talking about tithing and put it in the sock, because it's 2024. Don't put it in the sock. Put it in a donor advised fund at Charitable Impact.
Nice.
Because I mean,
Exactly.
in all seriousness, because
Yep.
but the action you're talking about is really important,
Mhm.
right? So back to saving, back to and we want people to think this way about charitable giving. You should be saving. You should be giving charitable dollars. Um, and you can save without knowing exactly what you're going to use the savings for. And in the same way, when you use a donor advised fund, you decidedly make charitable giving a part of your life, regardless of how much money you choose to give away. You can start to save charitable dollars in a tax efficient way up front while you figure out what you care about most, which charity's best for you, or which charities are best for you. And heck, in a platform like ours, if you can't figure it out, you can always give the money to a friend who might know better than you for them to give it away for you.
There you go. Awesome. In a moment, I'm going to ask you about a Cinderella story of one of your clients. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.
Hey there, peeps. I am super excited, John, to hear about your Cinderella story. So tell us about your Cinderella.
Well, the Cinderella stories, there's stories actually, and there's one particular type of story that I think it's my favorite. And I'm the founder and the CEO of Charitable Impact, and I'll tell you the story of what's my favorite, and I've seen it many times, and I'll try to tell you why. So the story is of the person who I think a lot of people can relate to, but it's the person who is generous in their nature and wants to give back, wants to contribute into society, has communities that they care about and want to contribute towards, but doesn't know how. And when they participate, they 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 get frustrated, right? And when you dig into that, so often the one of the major reasons is because like their participation in giving back is so often driven by other people as opposed to be driven by themselves. So, they get asked to do this, they get asked to do that, and saying yes is important and please do. But ultimately, if you're going to make it a part of your lifestyle, and part of your life and enjoy it, it's better to be driven by what you want. So the Cinderella story is that type of persona who meets charitable impact, and they set up their own giving fund, right? We call it an impact account. And they start being purposeful and intentional about how they approach their charitable giving. They take whatever amount they choose to be able to afford, let's say on a monthly basis, and make a recurring donation into their own impact account. And then they kind of they really spend the time and thought about, where is it that I want this money to end up? And the Cinderella story of that is when the person kind of moves from like, I want to be charitable, but it's so frustrating and annoying to be charitable, to I want to be charitable. I am being charitable, and I'm really enjoying myself doing it. And as a result of that, I'm also really believing that I'm creating impact. My own bias, uh, but which is based in experience. So please believe this, it being based in experience, is that um, the tool that's built for the donor is the difference between those two, the frustrated person and the not frustrated person. And it's ultimately why I started Charitable Impact, was to serve the donor, to say, hey, everyone can access and participate in charitable giving. And it can be fun. And it's most fun, like everything else in life, when you sort of use your own agency and direct it yourself, right? I'm focused on these things because I care about it, not because everyone else in the world wants me to care about it. Um, and that's the persona of the Cinderella story at Charitable Impact that I like most. There are other Cinderella stories too, but that's the one that's most important because it's so aligned with our mission of increasing access to and participation in and the benefits people feel from charitable giving. And that's good for you personally, but it's also good for society. I mean, if all Canadians gave a little bit, um, the world would actually look a little different around your community.
Right? I have fantasies of when capitalism is giving away more donations than the government's impacting, because then they start to realize, oh, actually, public dollars means more than government dollars. That would be ecstasy for me. And I know that a lot of people don't donate because they get so frustrated. They're kind of getting by, they're doing the entrepreneurial grind, they're donating a little bit of money, and they find out that some fat cat's getting paid 500,000 an hour to be able to run a charity, and it's incredibly frustrating. Then they quit, and it's like, no, wait, that's not the end game here. Like, you got to understand what else is going on. But I understand that there's a lot of frustration there. Is there any other things that get in the way of people not donating besides that kind of stereotype?
Well, the interesting thing about that stereotype is if you take your giving seriously and you do a little bit of work going into it, you should be able to determine that that person's getting paid $500,000 an hour to run that charity. And as a result of you not liking that idea, you shouldn't give them money, right? So,
There's that.
but the purpose of saying that is to remind people that when you use your own agency and you go into giving to what you want to and on your choice, as opposed to just because you were at that fundraiser or then either those gifts that you make become mistakes and you learn from them and you don't do them again, or you just avoid those mistakes entirely because you see those big administration fees. When you look into them, you find out that the CEO is getting paid too much money. This is all publicly available data on charities, by the way, so you can find this out. And then you just choose not to give to them. So, the one of the other biggest objections to charitable giving is like, oh, well, just related to that kind of, but charities just aren't effective. And the question I love to ask people who say that is, well, all charities,
Yeah, huh?
And what's most interesting, but also kind of sad, is that so many of the objections that we have to charitable giving are just rooted in stereotypes and lack of education and they're not actually real.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so, I mean, back to shamelessly plugging Charitable Impact and why we started it, we really do believe, and I've seen it so many times, that when donors take control, when they use their own agency to lean into guide their approach to charitable giving, a lot of those sort of things that happen, become mistakes that they take on themselves, that they take responsibility for themselves, and they grow in their sophistication, they grow in their education as a donor, and then they kind of see themselves get better at it, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not any different for what it's worth from any other skill in life. I mean, if you never cook at home, don't expect to be good at doing it, right? You got to make some mistakes and burn the chicken a few times before you get better at doing it. Not to extend the analogies, but I mean, you ever heard any athletes who ever won a gold medal having never played the sport before? No. I mean, of course, like when we succeed at things, it's because like we choose to find love in doing those things. or we choose to do them, we find love in doing them. That love keeps us connected to doing it, regardless how good we are at it. And just by participating, we get better and better over time. I mean, how many golfers do you know suck at golf and love going out every Saturday? I
Right.
just described myself. No, I'm kidding. I don't play a lot of golf anymore. But right. So this is the type of reality that we want people to see with charitable giving. Like it's something that you have to make a part of your life and you have to choose to do it. And like sport and like cooking and other hobbies, there's a cause for you that you care about. And there are organizations inside that causal area that are effective, that are really important, major contributing factors to society, and they need you, right? So our message is participate and make giving a part of your lifestyle, just like you should make exercise a bit of a part of your lifestyle. And and if you want to play soccer, do that. If you want to do yoga, do that. If you want to hike, do that. It doesn't matter how you make exercise part of your lifestyle. Find what fits to you. That's the context in which having your own impact account, your own donor advised fund at a place like Charitable Impact is super important because it gives you the tools to navigate between hiking and yoga and soccer and then you can have a experience choosing your own pathway.
Mhm.
And there's just way more joy in doing that.
Right. Well, and peeps, you know me, I also know that it is paramount if you want to keep capitalism alive, that you have to donate. It is part of the essence of the economics to do it. And it's not just me saying it. A lot of people in history, there was a famous, was it Andrew Carnegie that said, I spent my first part of my life earning as much wealth as possible, and the second half giving away as much as possible. And you don't have to wait until the second half. Please don't wait till the second half, because it does drive the economics in the system. So if you want to understand it from the soccer parents kind of perspective, awesome. Or if you want to understand it from an economics perspective, awesome. I'm good either way. And a lot of people will say, oh, it's just good people that give. It's just the charities that give. There's a lot of empires that wouldn't have gone down had everybody understood this and how it works. And I was saying in the green room that I was listening to Paul Harvey yesterday and the rest of the story. If you're too young to know who Paul Harvey is and the rest of the story, you got to go and look him up because he's got a fantastic voice for starters. Second of all, the stories are phenomenal. But he was talking about Thanksgiving during the Depression and how there was a charitable donor who started a soup kitchen in Chicago at a time during the Depression because everybody had lost their jobs. The stock market had crashed. People were lining the streets looking for food. It was unbelievably and unbearable. He started a soup kitchen and donated as much as they could possibly feed. They ended up growing the kitchen. By Thanksgiving, they had donated something like 50,000 turkeys to the people of Chicago to be able to eat Thanksgiving dinner. And it was heart-wrenching. Everybody wanted to find out who this anonymous donor was because they felt so good about it. And in the end, turns out it was none other than Al Capone. So, and once he kind of got outed for the donations, made a public speech to the rest of the wealthy saying, we have an obligation to keep the masses warm and fed because without them, we're nothing. And I think it's a hugely important thing to understand that economics and people are not separate. They are the same entity, which is why we get into these controversial conversations, which is why we argue so much about them, which is why we debate which one's better. And when you really understand your personal responsibility in society, then it becomes a holistic conversation. We can start having real conversations about this. And it starts with you guys, go and have a conversation with John. So I get off my soapbox. I know our listeners are going to want more from you, John. How do they start that process of setting up an account? Is there a minimum? Is there a maximum? How does that go down?
Well, first, let me reflect on what you make me think we tell that Al Capone story. We have 3 beliefs at Charitable Impact, and we want listeners to think about this. The first belief that we have is that everyone, like every listener here, cares about something changing. Mm-hmm. The second belief is that they have something to give towards creating change for whatever it is they care about. And the third belief is when you do that, when you give, you get something in return. So even Al Capone, I mean, it goes for everybody,
Yeah.
right? So love that story. That was cool. I've not heard that one before. Thank you for teaching me something. Um, look, uh, charitable impact is for everybody, right? Because everyone has this giving spirit to them. And as a result of that, it really doesn't matter how much money you choose to give away. You can be a part of the growing community of donors at Charitable Impact. Our minimum donation is $5. Okay, you get tax receipted right away as soon as you put it in the system. Now, for what it's worth, you don't, I have two kids and they don't have $5 to give away, and so I put money into my own account and then I send them a charitable allowance every month, right? So you can even be a donor in our system without even having your own money to give away, as long as someone else is giving you money to give away for you, right? Something else you can do with your employees. Hey, thanks for working here. I'm going to give you $10 every month and charitable dollars, and you can give it away to what you care about, right? It's a good way to develop culture inside of giving culture inside a family, let alone any community like a company. Because what you don't need to do is you don't need to tell everyone to rally around the same cause. What you do need to do is tell everyone that they should be participating in giving.
Oh, that's fun. So I
Anyway,
gotta ask,
yeah.
is there a transparency component to that so that they can see? Is it potentially possible to set up a transparency so that they could actually see, so that you could have like an employee fund and see who's doing what where, and kind of have conversations around that?
Yeah, I mean, we have different ways to manage that at Charitable Impact. I mean,
Fun.
because we work for the donor, even if that donor is an employee of someone, we do believe that they should get to choose on those things, right? Having said that, if the employer is not gonna, give them the money unless it's transparent and the employee agrees to that, then go nuts. We can share all that data. If you work for us at Charitable Impact and other every business that's got some money should be doing this. We reward you with charitable dollars. We just give you some money. Like when you join our company, you get some money to give away. We then match your donations into your account up to, whatever you want. We match up to $100 a month. And then every now and again, we do choose to rally ourselves behind a certain cause for some reason, and we use our crowdfunding tool. It's called a giving group to pool money and then make a bigger impact as a group of people. So, our tool is also something that can really help corporations or communities like schools and sports clubs and others develop a culture of giving around them. And because the tool is there and it's accessible to everyone, regardless of how much money you give away. And also because one of the biggest barriers to like getting giving culture going in schools is saying like, well, here's the charity we've chosen as a school, you have to give here. Then the people who don't agree with that don't participate, as opposed to, hey, we just think you should participate in giving, and that's what we're gonna enable as a school or a workplace community. But you can really give it to any registered charity of your choice. Then you see participation climb like crazy. Makes
Right?
sense.
That is awesome. So how do people start that journey with you?
Well, you can find us at charitableimpact.com. We're on all the social medias too, at We Are Charitable. And I would encourage you to reach out to us. We've got a team of people here who will talk, actually real humans who will actually
What?
talk to you. Yeah,
Nice.
amazing. But then the other thing is you don't have to talk with us. If you want to go to charitableimpact.com, you can sign up for an impact account. It's free to do. If you have an email address and you can, get a password in there, you're good to go. You can log in, you can tour all the charities, you can see what you can do. One of the things lots of people do is they're like, whoa, is my money actually going to get to the charity I choose? And so they bet like $5 or $10, something small. They start to understand how the system works. Oh, there's my tax receipt. They send it to the charity. They call the charity later. Did you actually get the money? Shocker. Yes, they did. Right. They go back again. They add another $5. They see another tax receipt. It's lodged in their system. Start to put together that, gee, maybe it's going to be easy to find my tax receipts when they're all centralized in one place. send money to a different charity. Gee, I can actually choose different charities to give to, call them to, wow, they actually got the money, come back and then start to become a more regular platform. You don't have to trust us just because you heard about us on the podcast. But trust yourself and your intuition and come and test us out. It's a completely free platform to use at that base level. And the reason we do that is because we don't want anyone having excuses not to be charitable because we're charging them too much money to do that.
I love it. So peeps, we will of course have all of John's links in the show notes. Go ahead and click on those links, open them up in a new browser because we're not done yet. So John, I get to ask you, at what point in life did you know you were special kind of crazy enough to think that you could become an entrepreneur?
The short-ish version of that story is that it was an evolution, and I never actually intended to become an entrepreneur. I think there's two major types of entrepreneurs. One is like that pure business driven, I want to be an entrepreneur type. And then there's something closer to a subject matter expert entrepreneur. I'm a subject matter expert entrepreneur. I defaulted into becoming an entrepreneur because I knew the charity sector so well. Knowing it so well, I could see clearly what it needed. It needed support for donors, not support for charities to fundraise from you. And I sort of became an entrepreneur out of obligation of knowing I had a solution, knowing I could deliver the solution, and knowing that you can't just wake up one morning and think of or running a donor, think of or carry out running a donor advised fund. So I sort of gradually figured out how crazy you need to be an entrepreneur. And looking back, I'm grateful it happened, even though it's a tough road.
I love it. We're glad you did. And it is good news for all of those who are going, yeah, but no, I don't want to go there. And then you realize how awesome it is and how much you can impact the business world by being an awesome person in an awesome place with an awesome opportunity. So it's all good. I love it. John, you've been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much. Any last words for our peeps?
Oh, for the peeps, I mean, you're generous. You were born generous, right? Have the courage to start giving, and start with small amounts. The Canada needs your participation in giving back. It needs your mind, it needs your heart as much as it needs your wallet. But when you put those three things together, you really are at a place where you can like really connect into understanding how beneficial it is for you to be a participant in the giving world. And so what I want to encourage people to do is just drop the excuses, and start giving. And like everything else in life, there's going to be bumps along the road. Stick with it. It's a cool thing to do, and it's a really important thing to participate in.
Love it.
And please use Charitable Impact along that journey. That's what we're here for.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, John, for your time. I appreciate it, and I know how valuable it is.
Thank you so much for having me. That was fun.
Awesome. Peeps, this is Michelle Nedelec. Thank you for being here with us today. Be sure to donate yourself, donate with your company, and donate with your community. It's a ton of fun. And share the show with your friends. We love helping entrepreneurs grow.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.